Yo, what is good, guys? It's been a while. I know a lot of you guys have been wondering about my Mamacita edit. So I've been meaning to do a breakdown for this edit for a while. So I think it's about time. So I'll probably make individual tutorials too for individual effects and things like that. But I'm just gonna kind of show you the gist of what I did. So let's get it. So for the first clip, um, something simple. I used Dream Glow for the text. Um, so I used the font called Chiller for this text. I don't know why, it was just fitting. That's pretty much all I did. The intro was a little bit more simple. Faded everything in and out. And let's see what this is. So for this top layer, this is my copyright thing here. So, and next we have this first transition. So this transition is pretty much similar to my AE warp tutorial. So it's pretty much a zoom out and the after warp. So this is pretty much it. I usually use a twisty transform for like everything now. So this is just an idea of like what the graph looks like. And I usually always keep the motion blur at 0.5 for most of my transitions. And here I use the blur. So I used a lens blur. I usually like to use lens blur. I don't know why. I just like it. I usually turn the highlights up or all the way down, but I guess in this case I just did it normally. And I added the same thing here and just simply did a zoom in. So now for the warp, I did do it a little bit differently than my AE warp tutorial. I didn't use a fast node. I used this lens distort. So I pretty much started at 2 and ended it where the first transition ends, just about around there. So, and for the warp, I chose this option here, the standard degree 4. And yeah, and I cranked this up to 2. Now, this is probably one of the most important parts that I used in basically every clip was the extra cam movement. So pretty much what I did was I keyframed the motion scale from 2 all the way to 1, but instead of 0, I did it to 1 so it can keep moving, but so that it's not so aggressive. And this is roundabout the graph that I used. And these are all the settings I used. I pretty much only changed the tilt and rotation amplitude. That's literally it. I kind of got these from the raw style tutorial from Wave and that typography tutorial from Peach. So the only difference is that I did not touch the pan amplitude. I only touched the tilt and rotation, and that's basically it. It's pretty simple. Next, let's see here. I basically did the same thing. And so for this zoom out transition, I used a dent. I always use a dent for my zoom outs when it comes to editing in this style. So I chose this dent without the DNT. I chose this one. So for this, I chose type 3 and started at 0, went down to -0.1. These were my motion blur settings, and this is about what the graph looks like. This is usually the graph I do when I do this effect, so, and it looks pretty good. Now, let's see what this is. Okay, this was more of a two-framer directional blur. So if you haven't seen Peach's AMV basics tutorial, he kind of goes over that a little bit. So I added this in addition to my shake. This shake I showed in my Twitch tutorial. This is pretty much the same shake that I use. I've been using this shake for a long time now, so it looks pretty good. I've had to spend a lot of time tweaking the settings, and the value that I like the most is -2.5, because it just, to me, looks more like a roto style shake, to where it's not too strong but you can still see it, and it just meshes in much better. So to this scene here, we have a couple of things. So we have the 3D text, the black bars that are opacityed out, and we also have the most base layer. So I'll start here. So pretty much, for my Twixtor, I actually use special macros. Uzaka Edits created these macros, so if you want to purchase these from him, you can. Pretty much for this scene, I did what Peach did in his AMV basics tutorial, where he added a little bit of depth to the scene. So I pretty much added the depth blur like he did, and for the background, made it radial, made it look something like this. And for the contrast, did something a little like this, and made the blend mode overlay, and that's pretty much it. This just helps add a little bit of depth to your scene. This just makes everything look, look interesting. I basically did this for like every scene. So let's see what this is. So for this is the eye effect that I did. So pretty much isolated the eyes by themselves using a delta keyer, and yep, pretty much the idea. This is similar to the Neptune glow, if you will. Tweaked it up a little bit, and yep, looks something like that. I'll also leave links to all the tutorials that I use and that I mentioned in this video, just so that you can see, in case I don't make tutorials on them myself, just because they're already made and those creators might have explained the skill better than me. So for the 3D text, I can link the tutorial I use for this. I did it how I did it in my first 3D text tutorial. However, for the text to be red on the outside and then on the edges be gray, you have to use a text instance, and there's a certain process to do that. But once you get that, then animating the text is pretty much the same process as how I showed you in my 3D text tutorial. Next we have the actual transition. So I used a fake zoom and then zoomed back out. So I'll probably also make a separate tutorial on this specific skill. But so for the twisty transform, for the first transform, I pretty much just zoomed out about halfway so that it just isn't in the middle of the transition. And about halfway is where I put the 1.4 point for the second transition. So for the zoom in first And then I zoom out with the same macro for this section. So, and this is a little bit of what the graph looks like. So in order to have it be smooth, you kind of need like this S curve here, and then make it end in a ease out, and it'll basically be two ease out curves, similar to that. So, and for the eyes, I pretty much faded them in on beat, and I added the same camera shake, same settings, vice versa, same settings for the dent, or same settings just about. For this one, I did 2. For the dent, it just all depends on your preference and what looks best for the scene, but it's pretty much the same idea. And same thing with the dent. I usually do 5 frames, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and let it do its thing. Same settings, same graph here. And for the black bars, I made a tutorial on these a while ago. The only thing I did differently was I shifted the width instead of the height, so they're coming this way instead of coming up and down, and I just simply lowered the opacity to 0.5. And for this middle part, I added a blur. For some reason, I have done this blur like only a couple times, but it's pretty much a lens blur and brightness blur, but for some reason I like to fade it out at the beginning and just kind of have that seamless. I'm not sure, it just looks really good. So for this transition, I followed Peach's MoGraph Monday tutorial, one of his very first actually, and all I simply did was I added a Neptune style glitch in the middle of it, pretty much. I have a tutorial on that too, but pretty much I added a edge detect, a X glow, and used a fast noise to manipulate these edges here. So I used a Y scale and turned it up to 100 and used a dream glow after that. And all I did was make it 1 frame and stick it in the middle of the transition like so, and it makes for a good transition. So once it comes out of here, it's a zoom out again with the warp, and I did another fake zoom here, but all I did was add a shake, twitch shake, and the turbulent. So this turbulent is one that I made based on Peach's latest turbulence tutorial. I just had to play with the values a little bit, and pretty much what I did was for the fast noise scale, I made it 2.5 and then let it go down to 1, and pretty much gave it this type of graph here. And for the bump map, the scale is pretty much the same as how Peach did it. 100 scale, clamp normal Z up to 1, height channel, luminance, etc. So it's pretty straightforward. And for the displace, I turned the offset all the way down, and for the refraction, I have it at 0.5 and then have it go down to 0.0058, just so that it doesn't ever really stop moving. And I have the spread at 3. And next, we have the same sort of thing here. The directional blur, but we have it as a zoom -0.1 and a twitch shake here. So for this, I have a couple things going on here. So what I essentially did was I masked out her in the middle and then added this overlay here. But for the overlay, I use a delta keyer to get rid of the black background and recolored it a little. And I use the time stretcher to make it fit in the clip, to just kind of manipulate the time. And I zoomed it up a little bit, scaled it up a little bit, and put it right behind the mask. And pretty much that's what we got here. And then before I did this, I was working on this clip. I compound clipped it and then just did the depth of field, the depth blur, and the contrast thing that I showed earlier. Now for this scene, it's probably one of my best ideas, really. So if we start from the bottom, so for this one, I didn't really feel the need to use the depth kind of thing going on there. So pretty much what I did was zoomed it in, zoomed it out. Now let's see what we got here first. So first we just got the ghost zoom. So pretty much I put the ghost zoom like this. So I duplicated the media in one. Then we added a invert color, but I always make the invert color black and white, so I turn the saturation all the way down. And then for the transform, I zoom it all the way up, or not all the way up, but to a point where I like it, so I did it to 1.3. And for the merge, I turned down the blend from 1 to 0.2, so that it's still kind of visible by the end of the clip. And next, I just did a zoom in to finish the transition. Now for my zoom ins, what I like to do, or what I at least like to do on this edit specifically, is that to add extra movement, I add a normal transform here. Start it off at 1 and zoom it in a little bit more at 1.3, and I let it be seamless. So I pretty much leave the graph alone, and just leave it curved but not stiff, and just leave it alone like that, just to provide some extra movement, so it's not just a stiff zoom out or zoom in. And pretty much I zoom out the same way, using the same camera shake and the same dent. Now for the turbulent, it's the same thing. Only difference is it's a little bit shorter. And there is a twitch shake here. Now for this part here, it's pretty simple. I use some vertical black bars. So let's see. So for these, I just kind of use normal black bars and change the height. put a keyframe in the middle, put a keyframe at the end, do something like that, and this is what the graph looks like, just about. Next, I did the lines here. So I did them one at a time. So I did them one at a time and added some glow. So I pretty much just used a background node and extended it like so, and just added a glow. And I just pretty much shrunk the rectangle mask down to make it look like a line. And I simply just duplicated this and moved it to the top. So using the rectangle mask, and that created this very nice scene. And I of course faded them out towards the end using the blend. So now for this scene, I actually did this in 3D. So if you go to my box like wave tutorial, I pretty much used this method in order to create this box effect here. So pretty much I created this first, and once I created this, I made it into a compound clip. Then in a fusion composition, I added it into 3D and pretty much just added that as my background. And for the transition, I used the cameras instead. So I pretty much used zoom in, then the zoom out. Yep. And I pretty much did the same exact thing with the dent and the warp and the camera shake. Now for the text, I use the follower modifier. I use Peach's tutorial for that as well. And funny enough, this is a little Easter egg that I left in this edit, but this is the handbrake logo, and I used it as the margarita part in the song. As you can see, that's the handbrake logo. So for video editors, that's a little bit of an Easter egg I left. And pretty much I use the mask in order to fade it behind the text to kind of make it look like it's coming out of the text, something like that. Like so. And yep. And for this transition, I also used Peach's MoGraph Monday. So the slide transition and this circle transition are in the same tutorial. So I pretty much used both here, and I did a transition like this. I did get a lot of questions about this scene here with the Instagram. Scene here. So let's dive into it. So I first had this. I had gotten it from a AE tutorial that I wanted to look at. I can try to find it and link it so you can download this image, but pretty much I erased this stuff just using some backgrounds and everything like that. It's plain white, so you can just do it easily. So then I pretty much boy, adding my own things in here. It's a little bit janky. I haven't opened this project in a while, but pretty much I added the text here and animated the swipe. So I pretty much took 3 images and let them swipe themselves, and then I masked it inside of the Instagram thing here. And another Easter egg, if you notice, these symbols are the Destiny logo symbols. You should join the server. And as for the transition, I did a bunch of fake zooms. So as you can see, I tried it a couple different times with the twisty transform and with the normal transform. It was a little bit more convenient to try it with the normal transforms because they act as no layers, which I also made a tutorial about. So it can zoom out and the edges still be complete. And that's pretty much what I went for this. And I used lens blur. And on to the next scene. So using it for this. On to the next scene. On to the next scene. We used another directional blur. I used the same line effect here, same black bars here. For this text, I have a tutorial for this as well, but pretty much the gist of it is, let's see. The gist of it is pretty much you have your layer of text here, have the middle of it faded out a little bit. So this probably is the, yep, this is the faded layer below. This is the outline layer, and then you'll need another layer to act as the glow layer, something like this. And yep, I will link a tutorial for this specific text. I learned how to do this. Now for this is the final scene, or one of the final scenes. This is, it's interesting because I pretty much masked her out and did the clone effect on the bottom layer. So pretty much for the background, I did 2 scan lines and 2 scan line nodes and angled the line angle differently, and they make this kind of effect like this. And I did this on the basic background here like this, scan lines like that, and then we have the first clone, which is the red one with the outline. You pretty much just copy your polygon of the same, and then copy your median ins and outs, and then you can manipulate the clones using the transforms like this. And then I also have the drop shadows and things as well. So, and then I used the normal and final one as the top layer, and I also masked out her eye to be able to do the same glow effect on the text in her eye. So I thought that would be cool. And yep, and same thing here. I using rotation a little bit with the fake zoom and the blur, and of course the Turbulent. Now for this last scene, it's pretty simple. I needed something to do, a cool effect, so I pretty much did the ink effect, but just copied it over her face. So pretty much this is the ink effect here. Time stretcher, transform, and then over the clip we go to apply mask inverted. I use luminance, and then I just added the edge detect, the glow, and then at least tried to create something different, but I thought it would just be better to let it stay on her face like so. And then there's the loop, and it basically replays twice. So hope you guys enjoyed that video. I will be making more. I have not forgot about the channel. I've just been busy working on other things. I have more edits on the way and more tutorials on the way. Be sure to like and subscribe, and let's make this video go crazy. Peace.